Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike.
And happy Tuesday, gentlemen. Happy Tuesday.
Hello.
You're jumping into our Tuesdays where we're doing a lot of implementation Tuesdays. There's a great article that's come out from Microsoft around just implementing and planning your strategies around Power BI. Great article, solid content here. Today, we're going to be talking about the section called BI Tactical Planning. There's actually a lot of content here. The link's in the description below. I'll put the link over here also in the chat window. That will be our topic for today. But before we get into our main topic, let's talk about some news. Any news articles, Tommy, you want to?
Oh, yeah.
Find
Well, something fun that I think would be maybe for the three of us to do, but this came out on the 10th and is hacked together the Microsoft Fabric, a global hackathon or AI hack. But this is also known as hackathon. So this could actually be really interesting and anyone can join. And basically what it's just basically going together is globally running from the February 15th through March 4th. Get up to a team of 3 people. What a coincidence. And basically just build a solution that's AI themed and using Microsoft Fabric.
I mean, the author of this article is a great author. His name's Paul DiCarlo. So
oh my
almost so close. Close.
Must be a genius, by the way.
Like the Mike DiCarlo.
This would be fun. This would be fun to carry on through the podcast. I feel like we should have to do it together.
I feel we should talk about it.
We can do it.
We could do it. That's not the problem.
It's interesting they're pushing for this direction here. I mean, I think this is I think what Microsoft is trying to do here is they're trying to put a push on, look, Fabric is AI. You can do AI in Fabric. Let's do a hackathon to kind of show that it can be. I'll be interested to see how many people jump into this one. Just because I'm interested to see kind of, will people jump into this and want to actually use the Microsoft, AI experience inside Power BI?
It is funny you say that too, because if there's all these other articles that Microsoft puts out on tech community or tech blogs.
Yep.
And I subscribe to that. And every single one about Fabric is something to do with something generative AI. There's a lot of solutions on GitHub.
Yes.
But I'm like, yeah, this one, add LLM prompts to reports using Copilot and get under models. So this is something they're absolutely pushing is, we're Power BI or Microsoft's in the AI game with data too. It's called Fabric.
If I think about our user base still, this is I like where they're going with this one. I think directionally it's the right way to go. Organizations will pile up their data in lakehouses, and then they'll need to do some more heavier analytical things on them. AI, predictive, yes, it's coming. But if you're going from a business user who's been used to building Power BI reports, and now you drop them into, let's use Spark notebooks and make AI happen. It's not.
Yeah, but you're not going to. Like,
you're not going to.
Not the audience here. Like, because
you're trying to draw in the data scientists to Fabric.
I mean, that's a good point, right? But a hackathon is also something that business users are not.
Ain't got time for that.
A hack a what?
A hack a
no.
Yeah. I struggle making reports.
Focused thing.
I'm not gonna go make a hackathon.
A hack a what?
Yeah. Anyways, it'll be interesting to see how I'm looking forward to seeing any of the output of this and see what people kind of put together here for this one. So I will be pleasantly surprised if something kind of comes together here.
Hey, man. Grand prizes, though. Free passes to the Fabric Community Conference. $500 per team member. And swag. That's a good prize.
Hoodie and blanket. As long as it's not that really yucky, like Fabric green circled thing sweater swag. I don't want that thing.
Well, you don't have to worry about it because you're not doing it.
I'm not doing it. No problem here.
But it is cool. Hackathons are a lot of fun. Get ready to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 days. 24 hours a day. That makes a lot of sense. Oh, Lordy.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Good stuff. What else we got?
Dude, and an actual just Power BI, no AI needed. This one, I am very curious you guys' thoughts on the impact. The feature set's cool, but the use case we'll see. Dynamic subscriptions are now available for Power BI reports. So
Yeah.
it is a much more in-depth way of really scheduling it out for multiple people. Up until this point, we all know the use case. One report, here's an email. That's just the report. There's a screenshot. Well, now with these dynamic reports, you can actually set up based on the model itself certain features. Say, hey, we're going to map these recipients to the only when these conditions are met in the model itself, which is,
Yeah.
I mean,
hey, there is nothing I like more than wasting system resources by generating hundreds, thousands of reports and then dumping them into email inboxes where, I don't know, 90% of them never get opened. I love it. I love
Seth,
it.
you touched on my point exactly.
Slash sarcasm.
Yeah, insert sarcasm here.
But hey, if you're an organization and there are lots of them
and you need to
that
print
love
all
getting
your
emails,
reports,
it is fantastic that this feature is now there. Does that answer your question, Tommy? About
that's what I thought. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I was not too far from.
Like,
I will
as
say,
opposed to, hey, I need to go look at something. Click. Oh, now it's even harder, right? I'm in Teams already. Click on the icon and see the apps open and see the report.
Yeah, I'm going to lean on. So I take your sentiment on this one, Seth. I do think that having paginated reports. I mean, I like the feature, the fact that it's so dynamic. I like the fact that I can add filters and I can add people and I can. It's very flexible on what I can do for sending information out.
Yeah.
What I disagree with on this whole approach is the data is current as soon as the data set refreshes. Why do I need to be going around sending out emails to everyone on all this stuff? And I don't like clouding up all these other areas of your email system just because someone wants you to email them the report. It just feels very traditional, I guess I would say. And yeah, it does serve a need, but I would argue we're doing it wrong. If this is a really required feature for your system, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, my gripe is not with Microsoft. I'm
No.
glad that it's part of it. Like kind of long overdue. We talked about subscriptions or dynamic subscriptions and paginated, well before this. It's good to have the feature. Obviously, there's a demand for it. My gripe is with organizations that want to implement things that way.
Yeah, agree. It just seems like we need to let's grow the data culture. Let's make it different.
The Microsoft loves it. The more capacity you use, the more you're going to need, right?
Sure.
And this is one of those very let's use all my resources for this. I would beg to differ.
It'll be nice when we have we'll have the emails or the messages. Hey, our tenant is falling over. We don't know what's happening. Okay, do you have monitoring? Right. No, we don't. Okay, let's put in some monitoring. Figure oh, look at this. There's a massive emailing event happening every morning at like
right. One person is sending out an email to the 10,000 users of the organization,
and we're whipping out hundreds of thousands of records of data for lots of users across the organization. Why are we doing this again?
Jack Kirby in the chat hits my feelings on this perfectly, because for some reason I can't get angry at it. It feels sort of okay, but it's not. It's wrong, because he says it feels very 1990s, which is nostalgic, right? Like I can't. Yeah, man, I was there. We were all there. Like you got reports and emails. There's this cool
all
thing.
Those emails, you create your own special folder for it, and then that's where all those emails go.
and then they just auto go there, and then you're like 3 weeks later. You're
why
like,
is there a 15 of that folder
look at it?
Yeah.
No, you have to go look at it finally, and you're like, oh yeah, go to my email folder to open up the report.
Yeah,
to just going to
the. Why do I have 1,500 unread messages in that folder? Mark is read, delete, and then I keep it. Yeah, you know what would be? That's what they need to do. You want to make it really dynamic. I want to interact with the report in Outlook. Why can't we do that? You can do that in OneDrive. Make it available here. Embed it somehow.
Are you
That would be
proposing a new strategy for Microsoft?
yes,
Not PowerPoint for reporting. It's reporting for email. Is that
literally
what you're saying?
every other. It's even more. I never lock the dang door. Thank you guys. So, but yeah. So every time, but yeah, just make it a dynamic there. So
I think it's a good feature. I think there are organizations asking for it. I'm not sure I'm going to push it for people or organizations, but it is there when people ask for it. I'm like, yes, it just ticks the box. You can say it's done. This feature, I think, exists for people who need extracts of data, who then have to go build other Power BI reports or other Excel sheets on top of the data that they're then merging or blending data together. And that's kind of, I think, where this is coming from. It's just that there is not a culture of let's ask the right questions and get the right data into the data sets. Instead, here's our enterprise systems and we'll just dump you this data. Here you go. It's up to you to figure out the rest of it. So it is what it is. It's a solid feature though.
Any other intro pieces?
I think the last one is have you as a company yet, Mike, got Copilot for Office from Microsoft?
So I've seen some Copilot. I don't know if I have it or not because I haven't really dug into it too deeply. I was reading on the Copilot for Microsoft Fabric, and it said it was available worldwide, globally now, but only people who are paying for a paid subscription to an F64
Or
SKU.
P1.
Or yes,
or P1.
Yeah.
Or P1. But I'm not paying. I have the free subscription, so therefore I don't think I actually have it.
I am about to get it, hopefully.
Yes,
so
you should have it.
We have well,
And you pay
there's
for that stuff.
there's Copilot and Fabric, which I haven't played with yet. The new Copilot for M365 is on top of Copilot Pro, which is like the Bing chat thing.
Mhm.
And then, but the reason I'm extremely interested, and Mike, I'm surprised you haven't like gone in on this one gangbuster, is the Copilot for M365. Like they removed this, you need 300 users, like just to get in the
Oh,
door.
yeah.
And it's per user per month now, and it's
Okay.
another $30. But there are things in here where like I really want to test out where Copilot apparently can generate a PowerPoint presentation for you off a Word doc. Now
we're talking.
I'm assuming Tommy has tested this out. If I can use the Copilots to give me a Word doc in bulleted form, and then I can take the Word doc and run it in and get a PowerPoint, hey, presentation done, right?
Presentation done.
There could be some time savings in there. That's the one that caught my eye, and then Tommy's gonna rain on my parade. But that's my hope of
So some of it, like, so I was testing
so you
especially
have
with
tested
PowerPoint.
this out.
Yeah. So it's a pain in the butt to try to get the licensing, especially when you're company one. But I've basically like had some of my slides open because it's now in like every product, like Outlook, OneNote, Microsoft Whiteboards, which is kind of cool actually too. And I asked it as something very simple. I said, "Hey, can you keep the same design as the template?" They said, "They're like, I have no idea what you mean." Like, I basically had no idea that it was related to PowerPoint at all. Like, I know that's very capable in a lot of tools in the context of what they're in, but it was like the response back was like, I don't know what a template is or what a design is.
It seems ticky-tacky to me. I mean,
Well,
if you can lay out a bunch of slides in a presentable format from a Word doc, I will handle throwing the design on top. Plus, the vast majority of organizations already have a master slide template. Come on, Tommy, you don't?
It's fine. Like it reorganized all my slides and added these dumb pictures to them.
Awesome pictures, you mean?
No,
Compelling images.
Yeah, there. You say
to gain focus of the audience.
It's a puppy.
They look like what were those picture icons? The shapes in like Microsoft like 98. Remember the like the drawings, whatever they were called, like win objects or something. That's what this looks like. I'm like, that's an image from 2003.
Maybe that's all you have license to use at this point.
Yeah, maybe.
So, Where do I see Copilot helping out a lot? I mean, I think Copilot helps out things where you're doing code samples. So anything like a notebook or where you're writing SQL code or you need help like that, those seem like really great places to use Copilot. Copilot doing creative things like generating images or artwork based on some text, I think it's actually pretty doggone good. We're using that a lot more on our thumbnails, even for our podcast. I feel like that's another great place to use Copilot. I think Copilot does a good job around, getting you started on some things. So you can use it for, give me some ideas around a document, give me some ideas around these things. But when it gets down to specifics, when it gets down to like, I need these bullet points, I need these things, talk to these bullet points, and then give me some tech, it doesn't seem to be able to follow the structure quite yet. I think it will get there. And again, Copilot's very new in all the Office products. I mean, I have to imagine it's been like a scramble at Microsoft to make sure Copilot just shows up on every product as fast as possible.
Sure.
So I think this is like a first pass at Copilot. I'm guessing it's going to get better over time as they figure out better prompting. And I think for me right now is I don't know how to prompt the best way. I think, it's the same thing when I started learning how to Google things. When you started Googling things, Google came out. Oh gosh, we're dating ourselves now, but Google came out and you were like, how do I search for this stuff? And you started getting better at searching. And then years later, you're like, okay, Googling things are so easy now. I know exactly what to type and I can usually get with my response to what I need in a couple questions or even just a phrases. Now it's the same thing for AI and Copilot. I don't know how to prompt it correctly to get out what I want. You need to study how to prompt correctly so that it produces a better result for you. So I had to do some learning to get it to be better for me.
Yeah. And I think they're going to come out with a lot more because the prompting thing is probably going to be the make or break. They have this thing called Copilot Lab, and you can view all the prompts and save them. It's like, cool. Well, you can't edit them. And they're all like, write me a Word document about, our marketing campaign. So there's a lot more customization that I think needs to get done. But again, we're not dealing with some open source GitHub thing. This is a major enterprise company, and I can't imagine the infrastructure there. Anyways.
Well, Microsoft's been doing a lot of they're all in on this. Like this is going to happen. Like Microsoft is building their own chips. They're building their own AI server racks inside their data centers. Like Microsoft is doubling down that AI is here to stay and it's going to change how everything works. So I'm convinced that we'll get better.
One last thing for the non-AI or generative things. There was an announcement by Kim Manis. There is a new Fabric certification and career hub, which is extremely valuable for those business users who want to learn all the engineering things. But how to navigate the Fabric ecosystem, this is a much needed thing. Glad to see this is rolling out.
Yeah, that is good. I like that too. All right. With that, I think we've exhausted all of our other intros or topics. Any other news articles?
Nope.
All right, let's move right on in. Today's main topic, talking about the tactical planning. Let's go through some of that. Tommy, kick us off. What's tactical planning all about?
So we are shifting gears while we focused on actually the last 4 parts of the series have been on the strategic planning and just really beginning to understand your organization, beginning to understand the assessment. Tactical is really putting that into action now where this is how we're going to carry it out. This is what we're going to focus on. Here are the objectives and the methodology that we're going to approach. Here's the actual technical and real hurdles to get there. So it's all about the way in actually we're going to achieve implementation. I love the article. Again, a lot of things that we talked about in our last one about goals, and we're like, man, we wish that they wrote about this. I got it covered in the first section here, where it's really talking about how do I identify a goal for that we're going to accomplish, and really categorize it, understand our obstacles, and understand kind of how does it actually fit within the general scheme of things that need to get done.
Yeah, I mean, up to this point, right? Like with the strategic planning, we had a working team. We've gone through an assessment at the organization level as well as the business level. And I think this is where we get into the nuts and bolts of that evaluation of, based on the needs, the assessments, how do we go about attacking those things? I was debating, but I'm going to lose this mental battle. I'm going to create some issues, probably in the conversation, but I refuse to keep doing this. The structure of this article and the ones prior are introducing, I think, just massive confusion that I really hope Microsoft goes and fixes. And what I'm speaking of specifically are the reuse of goals and objectives. It is asinine to me that we are moving away from structures that are well known, OGSMs, OKRs, that are solid frameworks and so relevant to how you structure and plan for success in organizations, and to rejigger them and say objectives are goals and goals are objectives and like confuse everything and everyone makes absolutely no sense. Go fix it. It makes no sense. Like if you're throwing some sort of bone to Viva goals, which still doesn't cognitively pull together for me, because that entire application is OKRs. It's based on OKRs. This is so confusing to me in the articles that it's like the goal is this high level thing. And then I'm going to talk about objective. Like it throws my mind into a tizzy every time I go down here. And then I swear it switches back and forth once in a while. That we actually are talking about objectives. And dude, it's irritating. I'm sorry. It's just irritating to me to read through here because it like you can't fabricate stuff like this. You can't just bring in your own thing when what we're trying to do is implement these things in organizations, and I can't align them cognitively to the frameworks that we push for, that everybody wants and knows. I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I'm gonna take a breath. Somebody else take over.
Oh,
You get a little heated there a bit,
I
Seth.
did, dude, because it's like the more I read into it, like every single time, it's like a bad visual on a page, right? Cognitive dissonance. Every single time I'm looking at it, I have to stop and I'm like, wait a minute, what level am I in here? Yeah, okay, this is what I'm here. I'm at the key results phase. I'm trying to build a measurable thing that aligns to an objective, but I keep reading objective. Right? Like it's just so hard for me. I'm sorry.
Well, and I think it resonated. I think the thing that is interesting here is because when you were looking at goals or metrics inside Power BI, everything got adopted on around the OKR framework. That was kind of where we started from, and I think that works well for organizations, and having that similar language at least permeating the rest of the documentation kind of makes sense. It's a similar theme.
Well, and think about the opportunities, right? Hey, today we're talking about objectives. Link to Viva Engage documentation, right? Like right now we're going to talk about goals. Link to key results. Like cross pollinate with your own stuff, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. This should not detract from the value of what we're talking about. But it's just I can't. It's hard. It's very difficult, especially when you're interjecting new ideas of all of this and where it belongs to end users. I think you're doing a disservice to yourselves by introducing this sort of definition. Anyway, let's talk about tactical planning.
So just to be clear then, in your mind, as you're reading this article, there's going to be portions in the article where it feels like it's going to interchange objectives and goals in various places, and you kind of have to sift through those. And I think, Seth, as we go through the article, it would be worthwhile for you to point out, okay, we're saying the word objective here. What we really mean is goals, or we're saying the word goals here. We're actually mean objectives.
That is what the giant purple note says, right? Like goals are the high level descriptions, and then objectives are the specific actionable thing, which is the exact opposite.
Yes, correct.
Right? So, but I like I'm saying, so yes, we need to read the article in those terms. What confuses me is there are points in time where I think it's back to the other way, but I could be wrong. And that's what I'm saying. There's just There's a
Yeah.
dissonance here that is distracting me from ingesting the information related to the solid frameworks of all of the stuff, a hammer in your head that you do when you're like, what is an objective? I'm going to create this thing. What is a key result? How do you, like, there's a whole lot of questions and answers and specifics in this whole SMART theory, and how do you want to make this an actionable result, and all of that you hardwire into your brain. And that's my difficulty, is like, I'm hardwired to like think about things in this way, and then I'm being challenged to think about it in a completely different way for little to no value that I see.
I'm going to point on your note here very quickly, Seth. So in the purple note here at the very beginning, it talks about, in this series, we define goals as high-level descriptions of what you want to achieve. In contrast, objectives are specific, actionable targets. You're saying from the OKR framework, it's actually the opposite way around. The objectives
Or
are
GSM, same thing.
Yeah. And then, because when you click on so in the first section here, it talks about step 1, identify and describe your actionable objectives and your goals and priorities. And when you click on the goals and priorities, it takes you back over to the Power BI implementation. And it is using another link on your goals and priorities there, which kind of decide on your goals and priorities as part of the strategic planning piece. So
it started in strategic planning.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Yes.
all throughout here. An objective
Correct.
is your highest level. A goal and strategy from OGSMs are the same as a key result, and how you measure that OGSM are equivalent to key results, right? They're actionable. They're things that compile and put up and move the big needle, which is the objective. That's the thing in all of these frameworks. And we're switching that here. We're saying the goal is the highest thing. And that's what I just, like I said, I was choosing on whether or not to go down this path, and I couldn't help myself. So I apologize.
I think it's worthy to point out, because regardless, I mean, to your point there, regardless on what you're using the terms here, we are talking about the same stuff, right? It's making sure you use what are the objectives of the company, what are we trying to get to. From those, you dole out goals, which in this example here, they're talking about, step 1, identify your actionable goals, should be priorities. And then from there, then you're looking at, okay, how does my strategy use that? And then how do we measure it? What measures can we do to make action on top of this, which is good.
Yeah. So one of the things, like right off the bat, right, or we're in this working session, we're defining the things that are going to make move the needle for the organization, right? Like, and one of the first things that they bring up that I agree with is time sensitive.
I'd agree with that 100%.
Time sensitive things. What are your guys' thoughts around like the focus on time sensitive and their description of what kind of work is engaged in time sensitive?
Well, there's always moments in time where there are applied, I don't know how to say it. It's applied rules, or it's applied boundaries you need to play by. For example, I've had projects where we are deleting, Tableau from a system. It's going away. We're not paying for licensing anymore. Like literally there's a cost savings that's coming with this. They're like, hey, we're not paying for this thing again. You've got 1 year to do the migration. So this makes sense. I mean, this happens. We're going to, we bought a company. We have 2 tools now. We're going to have 1 tool moving forward. Yeah, there are forced money savings events that are occurring that are going to make sure you have to hit these deadlines. So this takes total sense to me. Tommy, your experience with time-sensitive objectives?
I mean, those are honestly, when you think, we've talked about quick wins from you have to start there. And I feel like I want to go more on the goal thing, because that's obviously, if you can't get that right, you don't get a lot of other things right. But we have to realize too, when we're in a crunch, or it may not just be us, there are things that are pressing that are way more than I think what we may say as the most important things. And just because it's not urgent to us doesn't mean someone else is struggling or another team struggling. If there's systems that are wrong, or the data is that the data that it's coming in is poor, and we know that bad data in, bad data out.
Mhm.
It's kind of like the prerequisites. Like, it's very hard to make a pizza if you don't have the right ingredients. And the very way the time sensitive things are like, let's just build a base. Let's just make sure we at least have somewhat of a foundation. It may not be perfect, but we at least have some of the prerequisites, because usually the time sensitive items, those more urgent items, are things like, if it's more than just incurring technical debt, it's going to be a stumbling block every step of the way until we address it.
I'm not sure I'm following what you're saying, because I think of time sensitive things as there are known business timelines, there are known milestones inside the business that have to get completed, right?
Mm.
We like
I think
some
yeah.
other systems not working correctly, or and I like this other example they had here, which I've observed as well, is you have to, if you're going to make a transition, and fiscal end of year needs to occur at this time. So in order to have reporting, you need to have said system up and running by a certain period of time, or you're buying some new third-party software that needs to be integrated into your data set. We have financial reporting that needs to use that by this period of time. So, I mean, I think it's important, if you don't identify those time sensitive things, you find yourself working on stuff that is not time sensitive. And yes, you may be adding a lot of value, but you drop the ball when there are critical data points that need to
Yeah.
be delivered to the business. So, like, I don't see how your point relates to like that part of the time sensitivity.
Well, it's absolutely part of it. Some of the items here, like known flaws or risks that are inherent to existing solutions. Just because it may not have a deadline that something's ending, or that a project's launching, doesn't mean it's not time sensitive. It's really, to me, it becomes part of that critical part once we, again, if it is a stumbling block until we address it.
But I think of this is a you can work on any number of things in your Power BI build out of the solution. This is just saying, identify the things that have known deadlines, that the business is saying these are deadlines that you need to think about. Because if you don't identify them and say, okay, we need to have 10 financial reports done by end of December because that's when our financial reporting is done, or end of November because we have to use them for December. I think it's important just to at least note these down. Now, how you prioritize your work and what gets worked on first, this will play a factor into where do you start doing your work.
So this back and forth, I think, feeds into the point that came out of this for me, which was when there's this hypothetical question, right, in this section that says, like, what do we focus on?
Mm-hmm.
And what does time sensitive mean? There's this, in quotes, like, well, it depends, right? Typically, right, these don't currently, it says currently impact the business. Oh, great. Okay. So these are actions that are time sensitive, where we need to put them into the queue.
Yep.
But they do have a deadline.
Correct.
Versus right after that, alternatively, in quotes, they could be tied to deadlines, will impact if left unaddressed, which means these are real needs right now.
Correct.
And the warning bell that kind of goes off in my head is, careful with these, because this could derail a lot of the larger objectives, depending on how many resources you have engaged in this whole thing. Because one of the things we've talked about ad nauseum is everybody who knows that you start to solve problems with reports and data will come your way, right? Not and then we're posed with this question that, does every problem that we have with reporting and data have to be solved by this team?
Yep.
And the answer is typically no, but the modus operandi of a lot of organizations is, well, somebody asked me, so I'm going to do it. Somebody asked me, so I'm going to do it. And then that queue starts filling up, and they have no time for anything else because they're not thinking about the other buckets. So while, yes, I 100% agree, time-sensitive things absolutely need to be done, business typically runs at this cusp of fire drill all the time, and that will that has the potential of derailing a lot of your efforts that you were trying to strategically and now tactically plan out. And the caution that here is, don't become the easy button for business units or other people, because they have to learn how to fish, swim, fish themselves, et cetera, et cetera. Like there are bigger things. There's a bucket of time for this stuff. Even if there's a ramp up where 100% of the time is these quick wins, it should ramp down into a bucket of work. Like, okay, 25% of my time is going to be like the stuff that's always time sensitive, so that I can move on to the next levels and actually like get things done related to the key results and higher objectives that are going to come out of this tactical planning.
I like that statement there, Seth, because I feel like there's a lot of initial blocking and tackling. There is a lot of initial quick wins to get people on board and understanding the direction. And then I think there is a point in time where you can start slowing down some of those quick wins, and you need to start spending more of your time. Again, you can't ever get away from quick wins and delivering things, but I think you relegate less of your time towards those quick wins, and the team focuses more on focusing on bigger, longer, more strategic, getting bigger data sources, doing more data engineering, fixing things in the back end. Like that has to be part of the process. And those things are not easy or quick to do. So you have to do them, but that may be like a multi-month process that you're building in there.
Would you classify these items as quick wins?
The ones that they have listed in the article?
The first, well, I think I liked the fact that there was a delineation between time sensitive things versus quick win or high impact, because to me it resonates that those are separate. Like quick, like the time sensitive to me are fire drills, right? Like I would classify those as like somebody needs something, they're going to give you a 2-day time frame, or we need to deliver something to the customer by the end of the week, and you have a gun to your head to get something done. That to me is different than a quick win, which I would classify as there is a need for a report. In an ideal world, this is part of a larger initiative where we're engaging with the business unit to ingest a bunch of data, right? Like build things that will last, so that we build an infrastructure and then reporting becomes very quick. A quick win to me is I have to do some legwork, right? I could be connecting to multiple different sources. I'm building a report that is specific for this purpose, but I can't really scale on it. And to me, that's different. But at least, like, how would you think of that? How do you classify quick win? Like, do you think of it the same way, or is it slightly different in your minds?
No, I'm with you where the quick wins are. We talked about the low hanging fruit in our previous episode. These are things that we know that we can tackle in parallel with obviously what's the most critical. But it's simply that it's like, yeah, we can either move something over very quickly, something usually that the BI team can do in a very quick way. Those big wows, like, yeah, we can connect to your Excel file and visualize that for you. And rather than you having to do those formulas, that would take a day. Those easy wins that usually don't need a lot of other collaboration or approvals from other teams or sources are, to me, sometimes one of the best cases of showing what Power BI can do. It's a lot of they become proof of concepts compared to the time sensitive or more pressing, where it's going to involve a lot of people. It's maybe licensing, or it's going to be different departments, and everyone's got to get in line. So there's a lot of moving parts with the things that are going to be more critical, the time sensitive things, to get everyone aligned. Low hanging fruit, quick wins. That's something that we can churn out in a few days, or again, without having a lot of approvals there.
I think I like that part you're talking about there. There's not a lot of approvals required. I'm looking at these items that are done here that are quick wins, like setting up training initiatives for key users. I think that's a key. I think that's a quick win, right? That's something where you can immediately, without a lot of effort, turn that on and start pushing people towards getting their own training. Here's a whole bunch of learnmicrosoft.com stuff. Go do this. It at least starts the exercise of people educating. I think starting a centralized portal where you consolidate all your guidelines, your community of practice, that's huge. Honestly, I think that is a high impact, good, quick win. So I agree with that one very much. Creating shared central themes, templates, and design guidelines. I think it depends on what kind of organization you are. If you are a central team that's doing all the reporting for the organization, that would be a good quick win. But if you're a more distributed team and you're just letting people build Power BI reports across the organization, I think it's going to be harder to control that. So I think that one might not be a good quick win if you're allowing business units to have their own authority around how they build reports. Anything you can do around, I think another high impact quick win here that's not on this list is building community around, and this is maybe something that goes with a central community of practice, but building community around Power BI, finding other like-minded Power BI people in your organization, I think is a major quick win because there's already experts out there that potentially are doing things that are very awesome in Power BI, but they don't talk to each other. So just getting those people connected is very much helpful as well too.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you would throw that in the bucket.
I don't
disagree with it. It's just making me think about that aspect of things related to organizational adoption, especially in organizations that are very young, right? There might be a few users, and I've always erred on the side of caution where when you start interacting with the business holistically, like you have one shot if you're going to be solving problems for the business. But I like your quick win idea because it challenges that related to the community. Just like, hey, open up. Hey, if you Power BI users, quick win, there are some centralized folks here with a lot of experience. So if no guarantees, right?
Yeah.
Here's an area where we can start talking about these things, but nobody's making promises. To me, that is what's tickling my brain as far as like, okay, I like that.
Another one I think was another quick win that I've seen work well is, when you take a look at or review the licensing options inside a company, sometimes companies are trying to jump in with like, we should go with a P1. We should do all these things. We should da-da-da-da. And I'm looking at it going, do you really need that level of SKU performance? How about we just start with a whole bunch of premium per users, right? Or who's really using the reports? Another one that I think is quick wins is looking at using apps to deploy content. I think a lot of organizations are not using that. And I think many organizations think about, hey, we're going to make workspaces and we'll just add people to the workspace and then they get what they want there. So I think there's also this maturing of, deciding how we're going to share content and using that pattern over and over again across multiple teams. I think that's also another big quick win here for those pieces. And I guarantee you there's also other areas of this where you can go into, quick wins for me are you're identifying these time-sensitive things or time-sensitive Excel sheets that people are using all the time, going to those teams and helping them build a more robust data model using more data, picking apart their business process and then incorporating into, okay, I hear what you're doing. Teach me what you're doing, and then I'll show you an equivalent way of doing the same thing with less effort, but do it so inside the Power BI ecosystem. So I feel like there's a lot of workload migration, or at least lightweight workload migrations that can happen from a team. I'm thinking primarily around finance because they stay in Excel all the time. But talking to them, they're already having lots of pain points around moving so much data around, giving them better models, giving them cubes that help them with that. I think it's a quick win.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think the engagement of the business unit, and one of the things it calls out is like a quick win is something that doesn't involve significant design or processes, right?
Correct. Yes, I agree with that too.
And I think it's an interesting one because the value proposition could be a couple days, but in your case, Mike, if there are really large manual processes, you'll typically find these in finance, where people are manually doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then that is happening every day of
single
every
week.
month.
Yeah.
and an investment of a week or two to go automate that process
Mhm.
is hugely valuable,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
still would fall under the quick win category, I think.
And there's this in finance, particularly what you're saying there, Seth. I love that you're bringing that up, Harris, because finance needs to have the numbers right every single time,
Yeah.
and doing it constantly inside Excel, you lose potentially. There's always a potential chance of you screwing up the Excel file formulas and making a mistake. And by automating it, you now are getting I think a more consistent output every single time.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The other thing, the way I viewed, view most of this article is from a central BI team perspective. So Adrian's comment really resonates with me in the chat. He says, quick wins are activities that on the short term will bring a certain targeted benefit, right? The value to the business, that on the long term can facilitate the overall progress. And I think this is, I agree with that 100%. The point I was going to make here is if you can, like, especially in the centralized, like you have a long-term objective to, democratize data. Like it starts with centralizing data or getting to a position where you can share data with people in the organization. And some organizations have this really easy. All of their data is in structured tables and databases, and it's very easy to access, and like there's not a problem. In others, especially in the world that we live in with applications, unstructured JSON format is a big use case where you can build highly efficient programs that are just amazing on unstructured data. However, if we need to use it for analytics purposes, and this is why, Fabric Databricks, like Delta tables, like big data, right?
Mm-hmm.
All come into play is because we're not sucking structured data in there typically. It's usually unstructured, all sorts of formats from all over the place, and then consolidated down into Delta tables where we can actually interact with them. Like if you're thinking about those long-term objectives and architectures, quick wins are very, like, especially the data sources and the things you learn from them can help you build that. Right?
Agree.
They
Agree.
can be those stopgaps or those little stepping stones towards solutions that you would love to build, but may not have the resources and time to do. And that I think is what is really important to do in here, is still have those architectures, still have those goals that come out of these conversations, right? Especially with the key stakeholders, right? Like you understand the business problems that an area may have. And especially if you're not plugged into the data, or even if you are, there's going to be a bunch of business logic, different ways to reshape it, et cetera. That could be the long-term strategy, but these quick wins could be incremental steps as opposed to just being thought of as independent things that we have to get out of the way. Like you can document things as you go. We've got this. It's here. All we need to do is plug this into that and blah, 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 blah.
I agree with that. I think a lot of the quick wins should not be throwaway work. They should deliver value. But I think with that, those quick wins also deliver a lot of learning that you should incorporate to bigger strategic decisions. I like that as well. You want to go? You want to move on from quick wins, or you want to keep going?
No, I was going to say, I think this leads to, as something, Mike, that I think is near and dear to you, and that's going to be really the readiness. Are you actually ready for this? And want to, obviously, all the items that we want to accomplish, and the next part of the documentation is really defining readiness and the capabilities. I mean, it's kind of odd to me, the order of this, because what part of this is going through is, okay, what are the obstacles in our way from systems, technology, people involved? Mike, for you, the big thing is assessing the necessary skills that we have.
I think that's the biggest.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the major weaknesses in organizations. People over-assess how smart they are in Power BI, and their teams don't understand best practices. I think that's a big. You got to focus on that first.
I mean,
And
that's I think next Tuesday, right? Like there's several
True.
aspects.
It's
I don't
true.
want to jump into that one just because I think it's going to take up
A lot
the
of conversation
majority of
time.
that podcast. And there's several sections in here in between adoption and governance that I don't want to gloss over either.
Sorry, Tom, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No,
I was just trying to agree with the point.
Yeah, no, I know how near and dear to your heart that is.
Yeah. So let's go on to identifying other goals or other objectives. So jumping into after you've identified your time-sensitive tasks, high priority, and then your quick wins, it says next you should start working on objectives for how you're going to adopt, what your governance going to look like, and then how you're going to implement. This is, I think, another good planning piece. I think these will vary between your organizations depending on the culture of your organization. If you have a lot of data independent people that are doing a lot of their own work in whatever tool it is, Excel, Access, other things, your adoption pattern will look very different from a very centralized team where every report comes out from one team. But I think it's important to talk through these points and look at these in the lens of how does adoption work well in your organization? What has been successful in the past?
I really like the important point they make here, which is in this process of defining, I'm going to say objectives and key results, right? It's an evolution. It's not a revolution, right? Like you're not teeing all this stuff up to just like go hammer it, right? There's going to be varying degrees of the things that need to plug into. And having the holistic view of things is going to help you reach those long-term objectives. But you do need to do the day-to-day. You do need to like the short, mid, and long-term. And this is what's gearing this up is this is an evolution of how you get there. There may be a whole bunch of fire drills, i.e. like very near deadline things that you can not only build, but show the business, right? And that's one of the things that I didn't mention in there is it may be that you have to do everything first, but there are usually cases in the future where if there's a monotonous request or a repeated request that comes in all the time, you can show somebody how to do that or build a report and they can go access that permanently, right? There are different ways you can skin that cat. I don't know why I use that term. Solve that problem. But ultimately, like looking for opportunities to get the load off so you can move into the other areas. And this is the reason why OKRs are or OGSMs are so important for organizations is you're setting these time-bound things within a quarter that you want to move the needle on, and it forces you to get out of the day-to-day, right? And those fire drills and even to some extent quick wins could potentially be stymieing you from making those moves towards solving those big quarterly milestones that you want to attack and do. So I think that's the important here, but it's an evolution in not only our work streams, but our way of thinking and executing on deliverables that move an organization or our department in the right direction.
The last statement in this important note here, and this is what you're talking about, Seth, small but consistent, sustained progress is better than an abundance of change that risks the disruption of ongoing activities. This has a reminiscent feeling to me of this sounds like the agile process. Steady, regular progress, reevaluating what's most important, taking stock, and realigning your direction. Because what you think is important today may not be what's important a week or 2 weeks or a month or a quarter from now. Those priorities may slightly shift. And I think the idea here is that's okay. This is a focus on a longer term, steady change or a kind of like a growth mindset. We're going to grow. We're going to challenge some areas. We're going to sand off some rough edges, and we're going to kind of keep going. I like this. I think this is actually sustainable and will work well for organizations because they're like big boats. They don't turn easily. You're not going to throw a whole bunch of new things in and get everyone like okay, let's take a 90-degree turn and go a different direction. If you did that, you're going to disrupt your fundamental business stuff. There has to be, it's going to be slower. Think about a progression. So I like this.
Yeah, you better hope you have those little speedboats you can drop off the side, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Go zoom around, grab some stuff, and come back to the mothership.
Exactly right. Those are your quick wins. The speedboats on the side of the mothership are the quick wins. So, you're harvesting a couple quick wins here to get people on board, and then okay, now we're in the right direction. Now we can start steering the right place. So I like that one a lot.
I think this is a good stopping point.
You think we would probably talk a lot more about adoption, governance. This is going to be implementation pieces. I think there's a lot more to talk about here on these other tactical pieces. Yeah, I think you're right. Wow, it's already been an hour. I can't even believe it's been an hour already. This went fast.
You're like, Seth, really? You're going to stop it? And yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a full hour.
Let's keep it into time bounds.
Exactly right. So good note on that one. Tommy, what are your final thoughts on this kind of first half of the article? What kind of stood out to you? Any kind of final thoughts as you look at this?
I don't want to harp back on the goal and objective things, but I've dealt with them enough in the past where if you cannot define your goals as an organization clearly and what you're trying to do, everything is hinged on that. So get that right, even if you have to reread this a few times on what the objective is and what a goal is. But to me, there's a lot of moving parts. It's one thing to have all the ideas and saying we're going to do all these great things, but this is when you begin to realize how many moving pieces are going to have to be managed and responsibilities. And from a time point of view to people getting on board at the right time, all of a sudden there's a lot of more pieces that the tactical planning begins to discover. It's one thing to dream big, but it's a whole other thing to actually put this into a order of operations.
Seth, any kind of final thoughts for you as you kind of wrap here?
Yeah, this is fun part, and I think if we board people with strategy, this is where things, hopefully people are leaning in a little bit more up here, because this is where we start talking about the actionable, measurable, time bound activities, and this is how we tackle the work, and it's probably more in the realm of what people are engaging in on a daily basis, and but keeping in mind, right, like the high level, where do we want to go, what is the ship we're pushing, the block we're pushing down the road, mm-hmm. and how our work impacts the organization. Like that's the whole point of OKRs and this framework, going through all these strategies to mm-hmm. figure out where we can create efficiencies or generate revenue, right?
Yeah.
Within an organization, and this is right in the mix, and it's there's a lot of fun stuff to talk about here.
Yeah, I think this one, the one thing that stands out to me in this article, whether or not you agree with the way they're labeling objectives and goals, I think in general it's more of a don't shock the system. What I would kind of say, my final thought here is make sure you're thinking about your organization and realize that there are people in the organization that are willing to adopt quickly and will move fast with you. There are people in the organization who will move slowly and not adopt, and they'll make excuses. And it'll be, I'm too busy. I don't have time to learn something new. I think that's a phrase I hear a lot in organizations. And so I think taking the time to think about what are the main objectives we care about and what are our stepping stones to get there, I think is very helpful, because telling people why, like giving them kind of like the output, we're going to do this because it's more efficient here. We're going to do this because helping people understand a bit more of that story. I think this strategic planning, this tactical planning helps you produce more of that story, and you can get people's buy-in. I think they'll join you in that adventure when they know this is going to produce better results long term. And you need to allocate time for this. I think this is something where if you do all these quick wins, if you plan all these things out, if you are trying to move the organization forward, leadership needs to give ample time for this to kind of work. And you may have to change your tactics a couple times, because a couple quick wins may not be as big as you thought. You only know what you know, so you might have to try a couple of them. there might be a couple quick wins that have to happen before things start really picking up speed. So anyways, good article. I like where the tactical planning is going. We'll probably have another Tuesday session with some more tactical planning pieces coming up here in the future. With that, we appreciate your listenership. Thank you very much for jumping in and listening to the podcast. We know your time is valuable. We appreciate your spending your valuable time with us. If you don't mind, because we're making the investment, you are as well, please let somebody else know that you like this episode. If this was interesting to you, if this is something you're working through in your company right now, go read the tactical planning article, go through and figure out how does this work for your organization. I think you'll find a lot of value from it. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find the podcast anywhere it's available, Apple, Spotify, wherever get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps out a ton. If you have a question, an idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to Power BI Tips/podcast, leave your name and a great question. Join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on Power BI Tips social media channels.
Awesome. And we'll see you next time.